Well, hello, good evening. Good evening from Barcelona. This is the third webinar of the facilities management module. The main idea was to review activities. The main objective of tonight was to review activities number 3 and number 4, and to see if there were any doubts in relation to its development. Fortunately, no one has registered for this webinar, so I'm right now alone here. And what I'm going to do then is just to go through a little bit of the activity, through the activities, and explain a little bit in detail what I'm expecting from each of these two activities. I insist activities number 3 and number 4 from phase 2 of the module of facilities management. Yeah. So since no questions will arise tonight because no one is here, just make sure that you fully understand what it is requested, and if you have any doubts, just do not hesitate contacting me via email, and I will try to help you out with your doubts. Yeah. To go through the activities, what I'm going to do it is share the screen, and I will show you activity number 3, which is based on the case study of restructuring youth sport sections of Woodridge Athletic Recreation Center. Yeah. And here you have the activity, and I am aware that well, this is an individual activity, so it is not expected to have a lot of workload for you guys. And I am aware that the case study of Woodridge Athletic Recreation Center is very, very long and very detailed. Yeah. So the objective of this activity number 3, it is not to go through in detail and to read all the case study in detail. Basically, what I use is the case study as a kind of an excuse to develop this activity number 3. Yeah. What I'm expecting in that, what I'm expecting it is for you to answer these 4 key questions that you can see them here, and basically in a maximum of probably 2 pages. Not that much of going in depth of which suggestions or proposals would you do to develop or to improve the youth sports sections of the club, but rather than that, just to make the prior phase, the previous phase, which is first of all analyze what would you analyze in order to improve these youth sections. Yeah, which areas, which items, which elements would you analyze of the club, within the club, or within, I'm giving you some hints here, within the area of influence, to make sure that these youth sections can be or could be improved. Yeah, that would be the first question. The second one would be, okay, I know what I'm going to analyze in this project, but now I'm going to make some reflections on who should participate in the process. Yeah, so probably there's going to be some people in the staff, but the staff of the club, but probably there would be more other stakeholders and agents that it would be interesting to make them participate in some sort or other, to make sure that we have a very comprehensive analysis stage. Yeah. The third question would be, which would be the outline of this project or of this document, of this report? Yeah. So which would be the major sections you would include? You don't have to develop them because obviously that would be a lot of workload, and that's not the objective of this activity. But it is to analyze which would be these main sections to put in this final report. Yeah. And finally, the last question would be, okay, taking into account some of the ideas and suggestions proposed, how much time would you need to go through these actions? Would be 1 semester, would be 4 years? Yeah. So make an idea of how much time would you need to generate the change needed in the club in order to improve the situation of the youth sports sections. Yeah, this would be activity number 3 that I insist is an individual, and as you know, an individual activity. Yeah. If we move on to activity number 4, that's based on the San Miguel Health Center, which is a health center privately managed but municipality owned, publicly owned from the local authority. And this is actually a real case study, obviously with the names changed, but this situation and this let's say evolution of the management and finally this profit and loss account, it is completely real. Yeah. What I'm asking you here, you see that you have some background of the evolution of the sports facility during the first 2 years, and here you have what all this evolution comes into, in this case, euros, in terms of income and expenses, yeah, and obviously a final profit and loss account result, yeah. What I'm asking here, basically, it is to develop this project. This is a group project, so this is a little bit more of workload. That obviously, as I said in previous webinars, if some of you want to do it individually, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So what you should do here, it is on the first sheet, it is to develop with this extension half page an internal and an external analysis. This is always the first step when we go into a proposal document or let's say an implementation document. Yeah? We have to analyze the current situation, and it is different to analyze that rather than to make a diagnosis. Yeah, when we analyze, we are not identifying if things are good or bad because we are not interpreting this reality. We are only analyzing it. And when we go to this diagnostic, then it is when it comes to this interpretation of the analysis. So this is here where the different tools such as the SWOT analysis, even though it is called a SWOT analysis, in this diagnostic phase, it would be where you would, let's say, qualify things as good, bad, internal or external. Yeah. After this sheet 1, it comes to sheet 2, which would be the main strategic lines, the main strategic ideas you would develop, and how these strategic lines end up into different programs. Yeah, this is the previous element for the next one, which are the specific and concrete actions to be implemented. Yeah, this would be on sheet number 3. This is obviously an approximated length, and all these actions you suggest here, they will end up having an impact on this profit and loss account that we seen before. Yeah. So for all the initiatives and actions that you suggest, obviously this will generate some more income or less income, depending on the actions you suggest, and also some more or less expenses. Yes. I know that this is quite ambiguous or quite general. So the point here, it is not to make a specific analysis of and calculate specifically which will be the level of increase or decrease of each of these elements or items, but rather than that, it is to just kind of imagine how these actions you're suggesting will impact into the profit and loss account. Yeah, and you'll find that having to do that, it will force you to make actions very, very specific and very targeted and very focused, which is the objective of this activity. Yeah. There will be probably many of these items that they are not being impacted by the actions you suggest. For instance, let me put you an example. Taxes, which is something that obviously it's external and you as a manager cannot influence on that. Probably they will not change in the coming years. Yeah. So which would be the amount you should put in year number 3, number 4, and number 5? It would be the amount you have in number 4, in year number 2. Yeah, so in 2016. Yeah. So what I mean it is, for all these items in income or in expenses that you do not suggest any action that will impact on this item, just keep the same amount of money that it is expected or it is presented in 2016. Yeah. So this way we can see which are the items that really have an impact or are being impacted by the actions you are suggesting. Yeah. This will be, as I said, the last page, which is have a, let's say, an estimation of the income and expenses according to the actions you have suggested. Yes, this would be activity number 4, which is a group activity. And an important thing here it is that maybe or probably some of the groups developing this activity, you will tend to, let's say, split a little bit the tasks, and one person does some specific tasks and the other one does the other ones. Yeah. In this case, that's okay for me, no problem, and I will not know how you develop the activity. But what it is important to me, and what I will take into account when marking the activities, it is that these this document or these sheets have to have need to have coherence amongst them. Yeah. So if someone does the proposal of actions and another member of the team develops the internal and external analysis and the diagnostic, it will be important that obviously this is all related and it has some kind of logical flow throughout the different stages. Yeah. So this is quite, unfortunately, quite easy to identify, and that will be important. Yeah, to make sure that from the internal external analysis until the budget and how these initiatives and actions you suggest end up in different amounts of money, they all have a logical sequence of reasoning. Yeah, this would be activity number 4. Yeah, as I said, please contact me if when developing the activities you have any doubts in relation to some of the items to be developed. Yeah. Apart from that, since well, these activities or the activities were quite straightforward, I also send you a link to this document, which is a document produced by the Australian Sports Commission, well, specifically from the government of Western Australia, where it identifies or it establishes a guide to develop feasibility studies for sports facilities. Yeah, I believe it is a very interesting document. And what I was requesting you when I let's say announced the webinar was to read or to go through from pages 1 to 6. Yeah. So here the idea was to discuss a little bit this document. We start in page number 2, where we can see this, let's say, chart, this figure 1, where the document establishes 5 different phases when developing or when planning a facility, a sports facility. Yeah. So the point was to discuss with you if you believe this is okay, this can apply to any country, and if this differs a lot or not to what we have been analyzing in phase number 1 of this module of facilities management. Yeah. Let me give you my opinion. And my opinion is that it is a very interesting document, very well done. I'm no one to criticize this document, but probably what I'm missing here, it would be let's say, kind of a phase 0, which is before even the needs assessment, to identify which would be the objectives from public administration in order to when considering to design and build a sports facility. Yeah. So one thing it is the needs of the population, and the other thing it is the objectives that the local government may have when thinking in designing and at the end of the day building and managing this sports facility. Yeah, this will have some impacts in terms of to develop it. Yeah, that would be maybe the second weakness I identify here, which it is here they summarize it as in page 5 as facility operational. Yes, but this should be much more developed when it comes to identify the management model, the public-private partnership, if possible, to manage this facility, and the different elements to take into account in terms of in terms of management. Yeah. So having said that, and giving some, let's say, weaknesses of this document, I believe that this chart is very interesting and very illustrative to let's say structure some ideas and to generate a model or a guide that probably each country or each community should adapt according to the reality and the social reality in each place. But probably as a starting point, I believe it is a great structure. Yeah. If we move on a little bit, an interesting reflection or thought on that, it is that if we look at what has more impact on costs, probably the more initial is the time of the project, the more impact it has. Yeah. So the facility, the feasibility study, the facility planners, which will at the end of the day define which construction should be done, has much more impact than any decisions can be taken when we are managing this facility. Yeah, where here it says operational facility personnel. Yeah, so even though we are going to build that in 2 years maybe, and we're going to manage that for the next 30 years, probably the decisions taken at the beginning are much more important in terms of costs than the decisions taken when we are managing the facility. That's important because sometimes we tend to put a lot of focus on managing and not on the previous steps of designing, construction, and so on. Yeah, so that's quite illustrative as well and interesting. Yeah. And the final idea I wanted to discuss with you in these 6 initial pages, it is this, let's say, flow or process where here it is very clearly explained where some of the items seen before here are more detailed and more clearly sequenced. Yeah, so it is interesting to see which are the links between the concept planning and the feasibility analysis. Yeah, so the difference between investment and management. And again, sometimes we identify these two things completely separately. And at the end of the day, since managing a sports facility is an operations task, obviously the design and the construction has a lot of impact when it comes to managing it. Not only in terms of costs, but also in terms of potential demand, in terms of quality of the service, in terms of comfort of the sports facilities, and so on. Yeah. So if you have time, I believe that this is a very interesting document to read through, to go through all the pages, which it is not that long, to give some thoughts in terms of the elements to take into account when designing and let's say thinking in the conception phase of a sports facility. Yeah. Well, basically, this would be this was the idea of this webinar, where we have reviewed a little bit what it is expected from from activities number 3 and number 4, and on the second phase we have analyzed the document, which I insist, I believe it's very interesting. You should download it and keep it on your files, because you never know when it's going to be needed, but it's something that can apply for any sort of facility, whether it is a fitness facility, whether it is in a stadium, whether it is whichever facility you build or you design. And also with this idea that we already said in previous webinars, where managers, we should be always on let's say on duty or on work when it comes to conceiving and designing and building, constructing the facility. Yeah. So our role as sport managers does not start when the facility is built and we start managing it. It starts much earlier, when we have to understand which is the design, why it is designed that way, which will be the level of comfort and obviously the level of investment that maybe the management expects to recover or return on that investment. Yeah. Again, hope you enjoy this webinar, you have enjoyed this webinar, and just make sure you contact me if you have any doubts in relation to this webinar, to the activities, or even to the document attached. And well, I hope you have a good final or end of the week, and let's meet next week in another webinar where I'm going to go in depth in a very interesting tool management, human resources management tool, where I believe you will have it on the notes from Monday onwards next week because it's on page 3. But I believe it is something that apart from the document, you should attend to the webinar because there's going to be some explanation on that, and you'll see that it is very interesting. Yeah. So, well, thank you for attention and have a good night.